Economist here. So, wow, it's a hot one out today. I got my hoodie up here on the windshield trying to create a little bit of a sunblock so I can actually have a little bit of shade to do this video. But yeah, we're not used to the heat up here in the Pacific Northwest, and it is now cooking up here. So muggy as could be, but thought I'd be a trooper and come out and do a video for you guys today talking about Gresham's Law. Got a little bit of inspiration from Grand Roofing Incorporated, who really just did a channel a number yesterday, donating 150 memberships, better than 150 memberships to the channel. I am now up to 63 members to the Uneducated Economist. Wow, thank you so much. I cannot believe it. I was just absolutely amazed when I was looking at the stats this morning, the data, or the stats for the channel. But he did a great video that I wanted to share the link to, and hopefully that you'll go and check out the link. And it's to a sorting machine, right? A sorting pennies. So you have two different types of pennies in circulation right now. You got your old nasty old zinc pennies, right? And then you have copper pennies. So the ones from 1981 and earlier are copper, and the newer ones are made of zinc. So the copper ones have quite a bit of monetary value to it, or beyond the monetary face value of it, there's a commodity value to it in the copper value that's about, I don't know, 1.5 times its face value. Actually, it's more than that. I think it's up to 300% of its face value now. Where the zinc, although it's not as junk as you might think, it's still not quite the face value. Nickels, right, again, are the face value, if not they're exceeding it or coming really close to it. So when you think about like the currencies that we have right now, I mean, just the simple fact that these pennies are made of different metal has Gresham's Law now kicking in. And this sorting machine will pull out all the copper ones. That way you can take the zinc ones back to the bank and get some more pennies so that you can sort them out. But that's essentially Gresham's Law in real time right now happening. I do the same thing at work. I have a till at work that I, bring people up for when I'm doing my lumber sales. And the same thing, I pull the copper pennies out and I swap them out for the zinc. I can kind of recognize them by the color, and I'll, if I got time, I can check the dates or whatever, but if I see them, I'll pull them. And so I can just do that just casually throughout my day. I don't even have to really try to do it. So I think about that as far as how many people are actually doing this. I mean, this guy, created this sophisticated machine that actually is pretty cool when you look at it. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how this thing works, but he's got all kinds of computer and all kinds of stuff hooked up to it, and it's cool as can be, man. So go check out that video. But again, it's Gresham's Law, right? And this is something that goes all the way back to the 1500s. I mean, a guy noticed this from coin clipping. Like, you got to really think about, like, way back in the day, there wasn't really any other type of currency other than coin and barter. That's it. That's all you really had. And so the silver coins that were in circulation, it wasn't like, they were really manufactured with like perfection or anything like that. Like, I'm sure the purity was probably fairly inconsistent, but certainly like the shape and sizes is not like it's coming from a modern day mint where it's really precise. So what ended up happening is that the people who ended up with these coins would take and clip off a little bit of the edge of these coins and keep that silver for themselves and then spend the coin back into circulation. Well, after time went on, there would only be clipped coins in circulation, never having any full coins really in circulation. Those full coins, the ones that were unclipped, would be hoarded away, carrying a premium for them, considering they had more metal content to it. And again, this was like noticed way back in the day, like hundreds of years ago. And then even since then, anytime you ever have a debasement of currency, like when you start adding, common metals to it or base metals to it to try and devalue the currency, or to create currency by devaluing the coin using those base metals, again, the coins that are not debased will then be hoarded away, very much like this copper coin is going into my private collection, where the zinc is going to go moving off and back out there into circulation again. So watching this happen in real time, how could this look like going into the future? Because really, it's Gresham's law that was kicking in that got the dollar into circulation to begin with. Like, you think about it, if you have a gold-backed currency, right? If you have gold in as far as the currency that's in circulation, and you come up and you say, "Hey, I'm going to have this fiat currency that's going to work right alongside of it," people would be like, "Yeah, I don't think so." But if that fiat currency was backed by gold, saying, hey, for a certain amount of dollars, you'll get a fixed amount of gold, and that's set in stone, you etched it into stone. And people believe that. The confidence that comes from that then allows people to then freely trade dollars as if they were gold, like literally believing that they were trading gold. Now, most people didn't realize or could even think about it deep enough to understand how many dollars were coming into circulation, knowing there couldn't possibly be this much gold. Right? I mean, this is the same game that's played hundreds and hundreds of times throughout history. See, it's no different from the goldsmith who had a vault with gold in it, and then people who had gold saying, hey, you have that vault, it's a really safe place to put gold. Do you mind if I deposit my gold with you? You get a claim ticket for your gold, and you're thinking, man, this is almost as good as having the gold in hand, and you trade that. You put that into a transaction. So be it. The fiat currency is now born, right? See, now people realize that trading these paper contracts or the receipt for the gold is almost as good as gold. And when the banker realizes this, well, he could start issuing out a lot of that paper. Now, people who can get mad at that say, hey, you're printing out all this paper here, you're creating all these receipts, and people are like, well, the banker would be like, well, everybody wants it for the transactions. They're happy with that. See, if they were limited, then they would only be able to transact with the amount of gold that they have. And that's very limited. So the banker realized that with the demand for transactions being elevated, people would demand that paper money as opposed to the gold for the convenience of it. Now, a couple of other people might get mad about that and say, you shouldn't be doing this. But I tell you what, why don't you let me borrow some of that paper so I can buy some assets that have cash flow to them? And so be the banking fiat currency system. Now, we think about this, we know now that money couldn't possibly have a backing of gold to it when there's that much of it in circulation. But nobody else realizes that until one day they try to get the gold, and then they realize there's none there, and the whole thing collapses. Now, this is the system that has happened throughout history many times. But if they could figure out a way to prevent that from occurring, that collapsing of the system when people start to pull their gold out, when they realize that there's far too many dollars, too much receipts out there, and the demand for doing transactions is then shifting into a demand for safe haven, and the whole thing begins to collapse. So we think about this from Gresham's law and what can happen today, because something very similar is going to happen that took place even back in the 70s when you think about it. See, like way back in the 50s and 60s, we were a manufacturing powerhouse and we took all the gold. Right? We were producing the world's greatest stuff, and we sent that out there to the world, and the world sent us their gold. We facilitated trades by issuing out a fiat currency, having an elastic money supply so that we could increase the money supply during good times and withdraw it during bad times so that we could smooth out the business cycles. Well, the demand for dollars was so high at the time that people didn't really think about how much that they were trading when it came to the amount of gold that was out there, until the day they figured it out. Right? So France started pulling in, and other countries started asking, and we knew there was no way. Right? You start giving up all that gold, and our standard of living was going to fall. Right? So Nixon did what he could. He severed the gold standard, promised that it was only going to be temporary. You know this was a ploy coming from the central banking system. They didn't do it. The whole world was going to, well, the whole United States anyway, it might as well be the rest of the world, was going to fall into poverty and misery, as the dollar was going to collapse under the fact that they did not have enough gold to back it. So, what do we move into? United States treasuries. They promised, we won't print too much. But instead of having a safe and liquid asset of gold, you're going to have the safe and liquid asset of U.S. treasuries. And as people had no other choice but to accept the fact that they were going on to a fiat currency, debt-based, and although they didn't like it, it was accepted. Now, whether through force, through manipulation, or just had no other choice, the fiat currency was born. A permanent, I mean, the world reserve fiat currency was born. And so now the entire world is working off of a debt-based currency. Instead of gold, now we have limitless debt issuance. So we think about what it is that's going to take place going into the future as the United States dollar is coming to an end. I mean, there's no evidence of history in which a fiat currency has forever lasted. They all fail. And there's no reason to think that the United States is going to experience something any differently than that. I'm going to have to cut this stream a little shorter than I probably would normally go. My phone is starting to overheat, but I really wanted to share this idea with you guys because what we're going to move into is going to be a stablecoin type of environment. So what's going to happen, in my opinion, in my view, and some of the things that I've researched, and I left a bunch of speeches down in the description talking about the stablecoin, is that as the fiat currency comes to an end, because of the lower bound of zero and the failure to be able to stimulate the economy, the idea of moving into a negative interest rate is the only hope for. We're back, right on. So I moved into the house a little bit here. Audio is going to be kind of messed up, but it's the coolest place that I can be right now as far as doing this video goes. So talking about the stable coins, but what's going to end up happening with these stable coins is that what you're going to find, I need to find a place to prop this up. Hold on one sec, guys. Here, you want to check something out? We went blueberry picking today. Check that out. Can you see all that? 10 pounds of blueberries we picked today. It took us about a half an hour. You pick blueberry out in Brownsmead. It was a lot of fun. The kids enjoyed it. Well, they enjoyed it for like 10 minutes. Right? They thought it was pretty cool for like 10 minutes. But let's talk about these stable coins. So what's going to end up happening with stable coins is that you're going to find that the fiat currency is eventually going to come to the point where it can no longer stimulate the economy. And because of that, the Federal Reserve and the central banking systems around the world are going to have to move into a digital currency in order to take interest rates into a negative territory. They certainly can't do it with cash in the system because the moment that you have a negative interest rate attached to your bank account, you're going to pull all your cash out of the bank, and you will no longer have a banking system that is functioning because you no longer have your deposits or any participation going on within it. So what will end up happening is that the Federal Reserve, along with the other central banks around the world, will then begin to put a nuisance upon cash, making it very difficult to operate within a cash-based system. You will have stores or any kind of other institution who is trying to use cash will be charging a fee if you use it, because they will also be charged a fee when they deposit or withdraw the cash from the banking system. So this is going to force people into the banks, into the digital currency system. And typically what you would end up finding is that things like debit cards or credit cards would be like the common idea of what it is that this digital currency would look like. But it's going to be something very different in the fact that they are going to change the way the currency is going to to operate altogether, and they're going to move into a 100% digital currency. And a lot of people are thinking that it's going to end up being something like a central bank digital currency, where it's like a Fed Now coin, something that they have produced. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that it's going to be a stable coin that is going to be issued. Now, if you go and look down in the description of this video, I've left, I don't know, 3 speeches, I think, to at different times. I mean, I think these things are spread out over a couple of years, of the Federal Reserve acknowledging and talking about the stable coins and how those are going to be more of a regulated system that can then not even have like the need for like government intervention or invention. Oh God, what am I trying to say here? Inventing like the system, like, you know, it's already being innovated by, you know, essentially by the entrepreneurs that are out there who see and recognize these stable coins as being a possible future for doing transactions in the banking system in general. So if you look down in the link of this, or in the description of this video, you're going to find several links to federal speeches talking about that very thing, about using stable coins and how they are going to be a possible, not even possible, like how to regulate these things for the future use. Now, this is really where it gets kind of scary to think about, because once you're in a stable coin, once you have a fiat currency, they even say, like, even the Federal Reserve recognizes that these fiat currencies that are backed by, or these stable coins that are backed by fiat currency, essentially is the same as the dollar itself. Like, so if you have a dollar or a stable coin that is backed by a dollar, any monetary policy that is being conducted through the dollar will then transfer right into that stable coin. In fact, they have acknowledged this to just about any currency out there. It doesn't matter if it's a foreign currency or if it's a digital currency like stable coins. Any kind of thing that you have being backed by the dollar will then have the regulations and the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve transferring right into those particular items. So when we think about the stable coin and what it is that is then backing the stable coin, is essentially they take cash and then they buy like short-term treasury notes and like things like, I believe, like commercial paper, which is like, again, like incredibly short-term, like corporate debt, in a sense. So this ends up being like things that are like very, very, very close to cash. In a lot of sense, it's almost similar to money market funds. So ultimately, like these stable coins could be essentially the next position for money market funds, should they get to a position in which that, you know, interest rates become attractive for some stable coins as opposed to others. Of course, that's a whole nother, like, you know, idea and thought out there. But the idea of stablecoins being used is very much like prevalent within the discussions, and those stablecoins being backed by the short-term debt issuance of the government or even corporations. So that leads me to believe it was just like, well, if these stablecoins, right, are not just like being backed by cash and treasuries and the things that money market funds are typically being backed by, this is very interesting to think of, like the chain of events that could happen if the Federal Reserve was to start putting things on their balance sheet, such as that of the foreign debt. Right? So this is another idea that we have talked about just recently on this channel, is the Federal Reserve and the issuance of liquidity and needing foreign debt in order to expand the menu of what it is that they could use in order to operate, in the idea of, in order to operate in the idea of like pushing that liquidity out there to the rest of the world, right? So they need something to buy, and if the United States government is on an unsustainable debt path, they're going to need something in order to expand their operations. When it comes to providing liquidity to the world, they need to advance or expand that balance sheet. And unless they plan on destroying the United States with debt, allowing them to continue on with their debt issuance, they're going to have to find something out there, and that's going to be that foreign debt. So now we think about the foreign debt, right? And what it is that is now sitting on, like if that's sitting on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is issuing out dollars, and the dollars are now backing the stable coins, right? And the stable coins are basically being backed by foreign debt, right? You see what's happening here? What happens when those stable coins are now used to purchase the foreign debt? So, like, I guess what I'm saying is that how is it that you prevent or keep the liquidity flowing in a particular direction without having like massive regulations and banking regulations to have the oversight of where this money is flowing? Now, if you have stable coins, you have a central bank digital currency essentially, that is the stable coin itself, regulated. Well, now you have something that could be tracked and traced and made sure that it doesn't, like, you can make sure that it stays in a particular nation, or, that it doesn't flow to other particular nations or something of that nature. This to me is what I would feel is what I would believe would be the path of the Federal Reserve and where it is that they want to go with their monetary policies and where they would want to go with the currency, because they know that cash has to come out of the system at some point. Like, right now they are able to get their monetary policy back, but at some point in the future, they will have to take interest rates into negative territory. And by doing that, they're going to have to pull the cash out of the system. They just really don't have any other choice in the matter. All right, so that was me babbling off. Sorry about the interruption in there. My phone overheated. I kind of had a feeling that was going to take place. So now I'm sitting in my kitchen, and the audio in here is not nearly as good. So we'll see how things go here. Tether will implode. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of times people are very hesitant about these stable coins, is I very much like question how stable they really are, right? I mean, I think that's probably like the bigger question inside of it. And I agree, like, I would be very standoffish on the trusting of these stable coins. Let's see here. Possibly Tether, maybe. Hey, Freddie.
Yeah.
Hey, I have some glasses on the seat of my Explorer. Can you go grab me some? Thank you. All right. Then what is the solution, the fix? Oh, there isn't. That's another thing. Like, I think it's better to understand that there is. Hey, Mom, can you set me up with your tripod? Sarah, can you set me up with your tripod? Right here. Thank you. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to try and wrap your head around, is that there is no fix. Can we just like stand it up? Yeah, thanks. Is that there is no like fixing the system. Like, a lot of people want to come up with this idea of how it is that we are going to like repair or go around it, or do something about it. There isn't. Right? How do we? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Closer here. All right, cool. We're gonna do it like that. That way I don't have to hold it. Thank you, Freddie, for getting me these. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. All right. So, and I think that's probably one of the things that we have to like really take into consideration, is that there is no fixing. There's no fixing the system. Like, if you were gonna try and fix it, we were producers and savers. That was our moment. Like, if we could have like stood still there and just been producers and savers and kept investing and kept producing and saving and kept our standard of living very low, then that would have been fixing the system. That would have been like how we would have kept it going or repaired it or something of that nature. I mean, that's not even repairing it. It's more like maintaining it at that level. The moment that we started really enjoying that production and savings, like any human would, then what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with an inequality that begins to happen. Because once you start raising that standard of living, you start moving into buying into luxuries. What you're going to start doing is you're going to start forcing in the foreign production, and you start forcing out the domestic manufacturing. Now, this isn't my opinion on this. This is something that was described from Cantillon's, essay from hundreds of years ago. So it's no reason to think that economic force isn't at play today. So, Mom, let me see one of your jars.
This?
Huh? So how many of these did you make? So we went and picked 10 pounds of blueberries, and we ended up with How many of these did we end up with, Fred?
7 pints.
7
pints.
pints of blueberry jam.
Right, and we still have well over half of the blueberries.
And there's a batch of blueberry muffins at the end.
And there's a batch of blueberry muffins in the.
Yeah, $25 for 10 pounds of 10 pounds of blueberries.
Yeah, 10 pounds, and it took us what, about half an hour to pick all those blueberries?
Yeah.
It was hot. It was really hot.
It was, yeah. But he had, the guy we went to had like a field full of blueberries.
Yeah, and he had them all netted off so that the birds couldn't get to them. So
Except
it was.
when we went there was a bear.
All right. How are military action? There we go. How are military actions, expenditures, and weaponization of economic policy play a role in these circumstances? Well, this is the thing. Like, you have to. I think like anytime you ever have a military conflict or you have anything that you ever find that's happening politically, anything that's happening politically or any kind of event like that, it's really a reaction. It's an economic event that is happening here, right? Now, just take it back for a little bit and kind of realize that anything that is happening, politicians are reacting to it. Like, they're not causing it, they're reacting to the economic events that are occurring. And if it wasn't for the rise in the industriousness of the people of the United States, who at the time, then we would never be in the position we are today. If it wasn't for the severing of the gold standard and the issuance of a fiat currency, we never would have been able to expand the military to the levels that we are today. Right? If we weren't like, if we didn't do all these things. Now, I understand those are political actions, but you got to think it's the underlying economic force that made it occur. Right? Just very much like you can't inflict a tariff on a situation that doesn't need it, right? But you need the tariff because of the economic situation that's happening and then the political environment that starts to step up to try and deal with it. But it's the underlying economic forces that are always at play. So you can see it, like, just think about any war that you have going on, just try and relate it all the way back to even like what Cantillon described, like the Native Americans here of the United States would fight like incredible battles with each other, right? I mean, it was just like they're brutal. It was just like insane, these Native American Indian wars, right? And so the whole point of them fighting was because there was only so much land. They that's how they lived off the land. They didn't cultivate it in a major, I mean, they did some cultivating, but really most of it was done off of like what it is that they can hunt and gather. And so when you have an abundance of population and you have a limited amount of resources, there's going to be some pretty heavy frustrations that are going to start to take place from that, and you're going to end up in a war-like environment. It's just like you can't stop that from occurring. And now you can add a bunch of like details to it, and you can make it really complicated, and you can have all this political steam that gets blown at it and stuff like that you can really say, hey man, this is the causes and stuff like that, but really the underlying economic force at the end of the day are always the same, right? Too many people and not enough resources. Right? Or there's too many people who have raised their standard of living and don't want to lower that standard of living, and so they're willing to battle other people to maintain that standard of living. And you can find that to be the case throughout history as well. I mean, the Romans are a prime example of that. So, too much house noise around in here. See, this is why I do them out in the car, huh? I guess the muffins are done. Stablecoins are not directly controlled by the Federal Reserve like CBDCs are, right? I am into crypto. Stablecoins are not used for long-term anything, right? And well, I'm going to disagree on some of that. Now, I do agree with the central bank digital currencies are not the same as stablecoins, but I very much disagree with the idea that they're not going to be used for long-term anything. Now, that might be your opinion on it, and that's my opinion on it, but I'm also going off of what the Federal Reserve is anticipating going into the future, considering that they are trying to regulate and deal with this market, and it's not like something they just made a one-time comment about. I mean, this is something that they have been discussing for years. I mean, I was one of the first people to talk about central bank digital currencies on this channel, and it was before central bank digital currencies even had a name. Now, I got it from an IMF blog or Bureau of International Settlements or something. Anyway, I did a video called cashless society needs a negative interest rate or something of that nature. I forget exactly what it was, but it was one of the it was in the first year of me putting out videos. And I came across this IMF blog talking just about that. It's like, if they want to take take policy into a negative interest rate, they have to remove cash from the system. And in order to remove cash from the system, you have to have what they referred to at the time was an e-currency, right? A separate type of currency. You have cash and you have this e-currency. This is where they came up, where I didn't come up with the idea, but is, have the belief that they are going to charge cash to withdraw or deposit within the banking system, because that's what they said in that article, is that that's what it would take in order to introduce a central bank digital currency and force people into using it, or not a central bank digital currency, but a digital currency, an e-currency, right? Is that's what they would have to do, is literally make it a nuisance to use cash. And now, again, this isn't like my opinion. This is something like, I've been reading about for going on almost 7 years now. Like I said, way before most people even had the idea of a central bank digital currency. All right. They aren't, but they can't function as being equivalent via regulations. Okay, you can't just go to a hotel and spend digital coins. You have to turn it into dollars. Yeah, I agree. And that's not, I don't think that's necessarily the point. I think it's the idea that the stable coins can function as dollars without the Federal Reserve really having to do anything other than conduct their monetary policy the way they normally do. And I think that is truly like the way that they would like to work this thing. The reason why is because I also believe that if they start moving into ownership of like the central bank digital currency part of things, then I think that would cause too much injection of political environment into their system. I think the less that they can have political action taking place, like they can say, oh no, you politics, you go mess with them, you go regulate them stablecoins, right? You go mess with that stuff. You don't mess with us, right? And I think that's probably like that cushion, between the Federal Reserve and the regulations of the policy makers out there. It was just like, no, you don't regulate us, you regulate that stuff, you go regulate that. And I think that's probably more of their plan, although I can't really find that listed within their statements, but it just seems to me like that's kind of more along the lines of what it is that they're trying to do. Simon, you are truly do run a family operation. Yeah, man. I mean, this is like, this is how you do it, man. You gotta go and pick blueberries, and I don't know, there's something about camping in the works, so I don't know if that's gonna happen yet or not, but we're trying. All right, digital coins are like you invest and a richer investor hit their threshold and sell your coin is now worth less dollars. It's all dollars. Of course you can, Benjamin. That's what you do when you use your credit card, essentially. People are inclined to take on luxuries, and with credit and debt, it is easy to see how it could happen. Yeah. Learn what central bank digital currency is before comparing it. Okay, what will turn stable coins into dollars or gold, which turns to dollars? Will you turn? Well, I mean, I guess that's like, that's what any individual can do right now with their efforts or their dollars or whatever, is they could just, turn it over into gold and anything else they want. So I think, like, honestly, the stable coin thing is like freaking a lot of people out with the tracking and tracing and controlling and all that other stuff, which, is really there, especially when you think about it from the regulation point of view. But really, like, part of using any kind of currency, it comes down to confidence. Like, people really have to want to use it or feel like they're good using it. Like, they don't want to not use, like, they want to use it, they don't want to not want to use it. Like, you see what I'm saying? So if the stable coins kind of create any kind of like abrasion to the idea of like transactions flowing freely. Like if you kind of like, people are like, I don't know if I can really do the transaction like that. I really don't want to do it. And then, I'm kind of worried about the government tracking. And it's just like, is this illegal? Is this not illegal? I don't know. So in those sorts of situations, cash makes everything just flow no matter what, right? I always laughed when I heard people say like Bitcoin is the favored currency for drug dealing and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it's not. The favored currency for drug dealing is dollars. It's $100 bills, every time. And so I laugh at that when I hear it. But still, really, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, we got a super chat. Let's go check it out. Wow, look at all these comments. Gee whiz. You guys are really going at it today. All right. Hey, Douglas, thank you for the $2. Trigger or signal they are about to switch? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be a switch. I don't think it's going to be a trigger like that. I don't think it's going to go down in such fashions. I really think it's going to be a very slow transition into it, because the last thing they want to do is shock. Like, they want people to just, like, if you were using it and didn't even know it, or if you went an entire generation of using it and there was no real repercussions from it or anything, then the next generations are not going to question it at all. And I think that's probably more along the lines of what it is that the Federal Reserve would like to do when it comes to a digital currency, or even the introduction of a stable coin, is that they don't want people to be pissed about it, right? In fact, they don't even want them to know it's happening. And by doing that, it's going to be like a slow integration, maybe through issuance of like EBT or something like that nature, kind of like, subsidies or whatever, some kind of entitlement thing. And in that way, people wouldn't question it. Like, they'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll take it because it's being given to me, right? Essentially, you don't have to earn it or forced to use it. You're essentially don't have any other choice. So I guess it is a force, but you're asking for it. So, all right, let's go check this out. We got $4.99 from El Curenta. Did I get that right? In my market and other markets, home supply is up 43% year over year, months, and supply has doubled. Thoughts? Yeah. Okay. This is not that is a very relative statement when you say it's up 43%. Okay, because percentages is a very tricky thing that you are working with. Okay, now let me give you an example right now. If I had 100 houses for sale in my neighborhood, okay, and over the course of a few years, it fell down to 10 houses, right? I had 10 houses for sale because such limited supply out there, and everybody was pandemic, and everybody's locked up, and nobody's wanting to sell their house, and then all of a sudden, right, we only have 10 houses for sale in my neighborhood, and it goes on like that for a year or two. Right, and it's at 10 houses, maybe, give or take, right? It's around 10 houses. We're just going to assume. Okay, and then over the course of the last year, people get a little bit more excited, or maybe feeling like, okay, the pressure's a bit off. I understand this is probably like a new normal, and they start to put out some houses for, like, people are starting to feel a little bit more encouraged, right? So they're like, okay, yeah, let's do this, right? Let's do this. Let's get out there and let's get some houses for sale. And I'm going to be willing to put my house up for sale when I really wasn't. Now, in my neighborhood that had 100 houses for sale in it, that dropped all the way down to 10, now has 14 or 15 homes for sale. That's a 40 to 50% increase in homes year over year. Just went from 10 to 14. Right? You see how that percentage is a very tricky number? Now, if you go back up to 100, that would have been 1,000% increase, right? 1,000% increase in homes. Like, people would lose their mind. Oh my gosh, look at the market. It's just exploded with inventory and stuff like that, but it would have just gone back to normal. But that would have been 1,000% increase, right? You see where I'm getting at? So following percentages is fine when you're investing and looking for a return on it, but using it to judge where it is that inventory level is, it's very relative to where it is that you're pulling that percentage from, right? Are you pulling it from the low, or are you pulling it from the high, right? And that's, again, like, very It's a very questionable statement when you say there's a 40% increase year over year. Like, break down those numbers and see where they're really at. All right. Let's cruise down here to the bottom. All right. With central bank digital currency, there is no cash or paper dollars, right? No, that's not true. Central bank digital currency is a completely separate type of currency. It's like the Bitcoin of the central bank. So you have two different currencies out there. You have central bank digital currency and you have cash. And you have credit. Credit's actually a different type of currency. And coins. Coins are a different type of currency as well. I mean, all those things are different types of currency, and we use them simultaneously, not really thinking that they're different from one another, but they really are. I mean, when you spend credit, you're not spending cash, right? I mean, you don't even have the cash, but you can still buy the item, right? You can use credit. That's a form of currency. You still made the transaction take place, even though you didn't have anything to prove that you have done any kind of service or provided any kind of product in exchange for what it is that you just purchased, because you haven't yet. Right? But yet you still make the transaction. That's a form of currency, credit, right? Coins, just like the two different types of pennies that we showed, there's actually two different forms of currency happening right there. Even though the face value of it is only 1 cent, you literally have two different forms of currency in existence right there, because somebody out there may actually give you a premium for those copper pennies. Right? Those are two different currencies, right? It's a little difficult to use that one as an example, because you would have to find the person that would accept that copper penny for beyond the face value. But there are people out there who do, right? And so again, you have two different types of currency in circulation right now. I mean, in just those two pennies. And understanding it in that fashion then says, like, yeah, central bank digital currencies can exist, cash can exist, gold and silver can exist, credit can exist, other assets and barter can exist, right? These are all different forms of currency simultaneously working at the exact same time. Yeah. Okay, Bitcoin Buddha, thank you so much for being here. All I can say is there are very few paths around the debt that we have currently hold. I believe we add $1 trillion to the national debt every 100 days. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's why the Federal Reserve has said it time and time again. The United States is on an unsustainable debt path. Now, this is something that I thought was kind of interesting. What if it like a lot of times I don't really, I mean, I end up thinking out loud, but what if it was a situation in which that debt issuance from foreign nations ends up on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, creating the liquidity that the world is demanding, and somehow the Treasury or the United States is able to acquire that extra liquidity to pay off the excessive amounts of debt that they have issued. All right, neighbor Matthew Kid is here right on. I mean, that's, what are they up to?
It's just Matthew.
It's just Matthew. Oh, I see Rachel is just pulled up too. If you guys are, I mean, you guys can come in and have a conversation. I'll move back to the room or something. Simon, when you talk about taking cash out of the system, is debt also considered cash in that instance? No, it's not. Like, I don't think debt would be considered taking cash out of the system. In fact, I think the cash would be replaced with the central bank digital currency, essentially using central bank digital currency to pay off the debts, right? And so, no, I don't think that would be the case. I think that I don't think that cash and the debt would be. I don't think cash, like the debt. I don't think cash being removed will remove the debt, right? I don't think that would be the case. I think the cash would be replaced by a central bank digital currency in a sense. I mean, how that would transition is I would assume that the Federal Reserve, if they were to use a central bank digital currency, which they don't plan on doing, but if they were to, they would have to create one, and it would probably have to change the way that the Federal Reserve is legally allowed to do this. But then they would have to purchase treasuries using the central bank digital currency itself, right? And then that would end up within the treasury and then spread out through into the economy from there. So how that all operates, I don't think there's a legal authority for them to actually do that at this point. So they would have to change, like Congress would literally have to change the Federal Reserve's charter. And I don't think that's really like very, I don't think, not only is it probably going to be cumbersome and very politically difficult, but it's probably going to be a whole lot easier just to regulate the stable coins and conduct themselves the way they normally do and let the dollar monetary policy transfer into the stable coin. And that way they don't have to issue a central bank digital currency. And I think that's probably more along the path of what they can go. All right. Cruise down here. All right, but the sellers still get the cash regardless. When rates go negative, would be interesting to see. Yeah? The goal is a world currency. Well, see, that's just the thing. Bitcoin Buddha, I believe that the world has already got on a world currency, which is the dollar. Now, how do you replace that? Let's think back to Gresham's law again. There's no introducing a good currency into something that everybody has already considered a bad currency, but is being used, right? So here we have this dollar in use. Everybody is accepting it. People are writing debts that are due in dollars. They're going to need to acquire dollars in order to pay those debts off. This is the current situation that we are now facing. So people may not want to use the dollar, but there's plenty of people out there who do, right? And as much as that they say, hey, I think the dollar is disgusting and I think we should get out of it, they still have to pay their taxes in it. They're still getting their paycheck in it. They still have dollar denominated debts and dollar denominated assets. And that's really what is the most prevalent thing around the world. So how do you replace that? How do you replace a dollar denominated fiat global world reserve currency system that is being accepted? Well, here, let's just introduce a good currency, gold and Bitcoin, right? Let's, the combination of the two. Let's just introduce something like that. I tell you, I would be the first one to grab as much of that stuff and never relinquish it back out there into circulation because I'm a hoarder, right? I'm a hoarder, especially when it comes to like gold and silver and currencies that I feel are limited in supply. I certainly am not going to be one that's going to spend that when I can freely spend dollars out there. Are you kidding me? Hell no. So as the Bitcoin and gold try to get introduced into a world reserve currency or to be used for world reserve transactions, it's not going to happen because the person who does do it and who says, oh, okay, man, I'll relinquish my gold, will then no longer have gold, and some other dude is going to go over there going, no, I ain't giving it up, man. It's mine now. Right? Because that's what I would do, right? And I think that there would be other people who would do the exact same thing. So the dollar has to have a symbiotic relationship with whatever it is that is going to take it over, or it has to fail completely. So we can sit around waiting. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it the next week? Is it the week after that? No, right? It's not even next year and even the next decades. I don't see the dollar failing anytime soon, and I certainly don't want to sit around waiting for that to happen so that I could be like, haha, proved it. I got the world reserve currency now in my digital wallet, as far as Bitcoin goes or something of that nature. It's not going to work like that. Now, if you do it in a symbiotic relationship, like you do with a stable coin or something, then you can back that stable coin with just about whatever you want. Right? And that is the new currency because everybody is forced into it and is using it and stuff. So. I wonder if these guys can hear the theme song in the background.
Should I turn it down?
I don't know. I don't know if the algorithm doesn't like it or not, but I bet you they can all hear it. Let's see. In 2019, home supply was 6,100. In 2022, the low was 2,300. Today, it's at 5,000. Benny, you're bad. All right. Simon, there's another side to Gresham's law. What is it? It's it's Thier's law, right? Once the currency completely collapses, then you can have the good currency come into it. But the current currency has to completely collapse. Now, you can also use like legal tender laws or something of that. So, all right. Who was it that said that? Okay, Dr. Cash 7. What is it? Let's go find that. Okay, the scenario where the prevailing lower quality or bad money becomes devalued or distrustful, that people begin seeking and using more stable, higher quality good money. That's Thayer's law. Yeah, that's the exact opposite. It's actually a complement to Gresham's law. And Thayer's law kicks in once the current currency has completely collapsed. And that's what I'm saying. And now the dollar is not there, right? The dollar is not at that situation. I go down to the store, but nowhere, anywhere have I ever been denied $100 bill as a form of payment, except some transactions that were taking place at a like an insurance company where they just simply just didn't take cash, which I thought was kind of weird. So, cash is king. Cash is going to continue to be king until the day that it completely collapses. And now, as just because a handful of people out there or a handful of nations out there are saying, oh, yeah, we don't want to use it, we don't like it, at the end of the day, guess what? That's what they got to use because that's what everybody else is using, right? Just because they don't like it doesn't mean that everybody else doesn't want to use it. And even if they didn't want to use it, they have debts that are due in dollars. So, they got to pay those debts because their creditors are going to be a little pissed and want to take their things from them if they don't pay those debts in dollars. Right? China being one of them that's being an issuer of dollar denominated debt. You think about it. China went around the world. This is something that was really clever of China. China did something that was really unique. And that what they did is they took that Belt and Road Initiative thing and they went around the globe and they lent money to nations to build infrastructure projects like power plants and ports and whatever, operate mine facilities or whatever it was, right? They went and did on this big Belt and Road Initiative and they lent out like an insane amount of this money. Like, I don't remember what the percentage of it was done in US dollars, right? So now all these nations owe dollars to China, right? Now, as the dollar strengthens and these nations can't get a hold of those dollars in order to pay their debts back, who owns the ports? Who owns the power plants? Who owns that infrastructure? Okay? And they did it using dollars. See, if they want to go ahead and weaponize the dollar, China's going to take advantage of that. And if they weaponize the dollar, it's going to benefit China. People don't know this. People don't realize that. This is dollar funding stresses in China. Right? If you go and read the Federal Reserve document, that's what it's called, dollar funding stresses in China, right? And they talk all about this. And China is not the only one. There's other nations who are suffering from the same consequences of a stronger dollar. One of the reasons why you see so many nations out there dumping U.S. treasuries out there is not because they don't want the dollar or they don't want the treasuries, it's they have so much dollar denominated debt that is due in dollars and they are not doing enough business out there to acquire the dollars they need to pay those debts. So they have to sell the dollar denominated assets. And the fastest way into dollars is selling US treasuries. Nobody wants to explain it like that, but that's seriously the situation. But yet not a single communication out there within the mainstream media have I ever seen say that. But that's what's going on, I guess you give it any meaning you want. You can give it the meaning that, hey, we don't like these dollars anymore, just watch us dump these treasuries. And it was like, okay, well, it's not a lie, is it? It's not a lie. It seems to be truthful. But really the meaning that I see behind it is you guys really need some dollars to pay those dollar denominated debts. And if you don't, your credit rating is going to go to hell. And then you're not going to have anybody borrowing any of your money or any of your bonds or whatever, lending you money. Anyhow. Oh, I'm gonna use the other hand here so I don't block the camera. All right, you're not in the car. What gives? The car is about 100 degrees and it cooked my phone in like 10 minutes, like 15 minutes or something. So, but you guys can tell the difference, right? Because now I'm sitting here in the kitchen. You can tell it's loud. Simon no longer has a vehicle. I do have a vehicle. Too many speeding tickets. I've never had a speeding ticket. All right, YouTube throttle. What does that mean? All right. Penny's so funny. All right, Henry, don't listen to Jeff. Simon no longer has his vehicle. I do have a vehicle, bro. All right. Benny is he's so funny, isn't he? All right, you don't need to pay in dollars if there is an ESDR that connects CBDC where each country uses their own. Yeah, no, I don't. Okay, can you show me where that infrastructure is being talked about and being built by the Federal Reserve? right? Because I'm not saying that infrastructure isn't happening. I'm not saying the BRICS aren't doing their thing. I'm not saying that all the other like ideas that a lot of people are putting out there isn't happening. What I'm saying is that the dominating currency of the world is the dollar, and that the monetary policy that the Federal Reserve is conducting is more important to me than anything else out there, because all that rest of the stuff is a hypothetical. Right? Even the idea of a stablecoin is still a hypothetical, but it's the hypothetical that's coming from the people who are conducting monetary policy, right? They aren't talking about XRP. They're not talking about Bitcoin. Well, they do talk a little bit about Bitcoin, but they're not talking about it in any kind of serious fashion. Like this is what's going to end up being used. Now, if you want to take on the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to fail completely and that there's going to have to be some other system that is going to be introduced or used or something like that, yeah, that's great, but I don't see it failing yet, right? And like, I can sit around and wait for them to fail, or I can actually do something with what's actually happening right now, which is them talking about stablecoins and the conducting their monetary policy through the stablecoins and the regulations of them. Right? That's what I see happening. Like, I'm a Bitcoin fan. Like, I like Bitcoin. I like silver and gold. Like, I love those things. But, I'm not married to either one of them. I'm certainly, like, I have no expectations of any of them performing in any way other than just being a speculative asset like they are, right? All right, Benny, as Road Dog, you're at least partially culpable. All right, question. Would stablecoin adoption hurt small and mid-sized banks? I would imagine, yeah. I think like the consolidation of banks, and eventually what we'll end up with is probably just a handful of banks in this nation, some of the bigger banks. And, some of the, well, it's hard to say that because regions across the United States have different styles of banking for different types of business that is being conducted in that area. Like, you think about it, like if you're a bank that is operating in Silicon Valley, you're probably going to be very aware of tech type business, right? And you're going to be, knowing how to lend into those business ventures and stuff like that, right? Like, that's the type of banking or banker you are. But if you take that banker and you drop him into the Midwest where he's in farm country, you think that guy's going to know what products to offer, or what it is that he needs to provide, or what kind of business to do with these guys? Hell no. Like, he ain't gonna. And same thing for the Midwest farmer guy. You can't drop him into a tech operation and him to expect what's going on. Like, it doesn't work like that. It's a completely different operation. Now, it is the banking system, but it's not necessarily like, doing the same thing. So when it comes to these different types of regional banks and how they are providing for their local communities, the way that the banking system is structured with these smaller regional banks like they are is geared for the people of that area. And in order to facilitate that on a concentrated level, you would have to have people who are aware of the wants and needs of those particular people. Otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't work, right? I mean, you wouldn't have an easy flowing financial system. Anyhow. Stable coins aren't hypothetical, they are widely used. Yeah, no, that's true. But I think like the hypothetical point of it is from the like idea that maybe you could pay taxes with them or something of that nature. And in that sense, then there would be a lot more regulation coming from the from like, the government or whatever. All right, did you know that during the Depression, states and corporations issued their own script? Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, you could find a time where banks, like banknotes, were issued all across the nation, like from all kinds of different regional banks out there. And it was basically, again, a liability to their balance sheet, very much like a Federal Reserve note would be. Right? So the money was much different back in the day. Like, the trust of banks was very limited, right? I mean, not everybody would probably accept all the notes that were, being distributed around. And this is where like I think the idea of the Federal Reserve and creating an elastic money supply and trying to smooth out the system was part of their excuses for the creation of it. But you know, I mean, I have in my, in my collection, I have 3 notes that were issued essentially. Well, I have a Federal Reserve note that was issued in the 50s. I have a United States Treasury note, right? A $5, or it's a $2 Treasury note, right? That was issued in the 60s, right? And then I have a silver certificate that was also issued in the 60s, right? But the silver certificate is the newest one. The Federal Reserve note is the oldest one. These were 3 forms of fiat currency, paper folding currencies that were in circulation all at the exact same time. A silver certificate, a United States Treasury note, and a Federal Reserve note. Right? And so even now, there's different types of currencies. We just don't recognize them for what they are. We just kind of assume them all to be the same thing. The dollar is already a stable coin. Where's the car? I joined late today. The car is overheating my phone, so I can't sit in it because it's 100 degrees in Pacific Northwest today. Stablecoins stablecoins are the new euro dollar. Just saw the U.S. government is making 10% yield on about 20 million stablecoins. AAVE peanuts, but interesting. Company script is an interesting piece of history. Yeah, it is. Oh, I restarted YouTube and it fixed it. Sorry. Cash use is down. People already use digital currencies in the form of debit cards. See, that's the reason why it's going to be such an easy transition into a stable coin or into any kind of form of a central bank digital currency. If they were to introduce one, is that people are already used to using their debit card. And if they were using their debit card or their credit card or an online purchase like PayPal or something of that nature, and it was being done in a central bank digital currency or a stable coin of some fashion, and they didn't even realize it, right? Because they aren't actually doing a cash transaction. It's all being done through, computer transactions. I could easily see where a lot of people may end up using a stablecoin or a central bank digital currency and not even realize they were doing it. Like I could easily see that taking place. People are like, I'm not going to do that thing. And then they realize, oh shit, I've been doing it for a whole year now, making my house payment using it. Thank you for the membership. Yeah, I have to thank again Grand Roofing Incorporated. I mean, he really did a number for the channel yesterday. He donated well over 150 memberships. Like he just went through and just like pretty much everybody who was in the chat was getting a membership, and I couldn't believe it. He took my membership from just shy of 600 to now over 763 members to the channel. It's just incredible. I mean, I can't wait to hit that thousand membership mark on the channel. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that someday. But just the building of the channel itself has just been an incredible fun adventure. And the amount of people who have now come to me and saying, dude, thank you so much for starting this up, for going through those, Fed speeches, as boring as they are, right? Sitting through it, having the discussion about it has really given a lot of people the ability to internalize the monetary policy coming from the Fed. And now they can recognize and see a lot of the propaganda that is being stated out there within the mainstream media. They can recognize it almost right away, because there's 2 forms of communication that are happening out there. There's the mainstream media propaganda pushing the monetary policy, and then there's the communication that they use to talk to the other central bankers. And when you see it, you can see that there's obviously 2 different communications happening. So yeah, thank you for being part of that membership, being a member of the channel for, it's $1 a month. So thank you very much, Grand Roofing Incorporated, for hooking all those people up. I mean, like 150 people got memberships last night. It was an incredible thing to watch happen. And I'm looking forward to doing the next night live stream. And I think doing it on stablecoins and some of the speeches that I left down in the description of this video is probably going to be a pretty good one. So maybe we'll set that one up. I don't know if we're going to do it tomorrow or maybe on Monday or something like that. The family is wanting to do camping trips, so I don't know if we're going to be in any kind of area in which I can have cell service to even do something like that. Because camping's supposed to be away from work, right? This isn't work, this is fun for me. But thank you, Grand Roofing Incorporated, and I left a link down in the description to one of his videos, which was really cool, how he sorts out the copper pennies. Okay, wouldn't stable coins cut out that middleman? What middleman? Like the issuer of dollars or something? I mean, I think that the issuer of dollars is still going to happen because the stable coin is buying the dollars, right? It's essentially going to get the hold of the Federal Reserve's liabilities and then use that to back the coin. So, question, Simon, and it doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, that's what it's going to be introduced as. People are going to accept it as that, but then one day we may find out that stable coins are backed by the debt of all kinds of foreign nations, but not backed by dollars at all, you know? Which very well could happen like that. Question, Simon, what happens to the banks and credit card whose business is debt and interest and is their main revenue source? I couldn't tell you. Like I couldn't begin to imagine what is going to happen in a hypothetical situation when it comes to stuff like that. So, I mean, ultimately, everybody who has the money wants to lend it out so that people can pay them an interest on it. So they're going to figure out a way to keep the debt going. Simon, do you think the Fed would aim to be in control of all, at least the major stable coins, in order to use them to pull the cash out of the system to take interest rates into negative territory? No, I don't think they have to do anything other than just... I think the only thing they would really have to do is just conduct their monetary policy like they normally would. And just whatever policy that they have going on with I guess it would be pretty difficult to not be in a position of being the issuer of the currency and then take that currency into negative interest rates. But ultimately, if you have a stable coin in circulation or being used, and all the cash is sitting at those stable coins, you can take a negative interest rate to the Fed funds rate, which was ultimately going to be stable coins are creating a stable environment, like all the products and stuff. I think that's to more political action than they want to do. So they can be like, the issuer of the dollar and just, whatever monetary policy they have will transfer into the state. Since having my son, a neighbor offered up some unsolicited yet interesting advice, and that is to live by the 3 to evolve for reasons. Like, I read a speech on it, but really there's a couple of speeches out there that might give us a little bit better understanding of where it is that they would feel about what it is that they need to do in order to work alongside these stable coins, which I really do think that it's just allowing that innovation to take off all on its own, having government regulated, and then as long as they are backing that coin with the dollars, any kind of monetary policy will just flow right into it. So home roofer must have hit me up with a membership. Yeah, isn't that cool? He literally, I think he just spent the entire time during the live stream just hooking people up with memberships. It was awesome. They are worthless and crypto is sad. You got some great fans here, buddy. Yeah, I really do. I know everybody's probably a little biased about their channel and, everything, but I really do feel like I have the best economics channel on YouTube, especially when it comes to the discussions that we have, some of the topics that we, come up with. I mean, the members of the channel are incredibly intelligent. They have, lots of great comments, great questions, great insight. I just don't really feel like anybody else out there is quite doing it like this. As economic conditions get worse, mass crime and carnage and civil unrest. Yeah, you'll see it when food prices really start when food prices gets to, here, I can't remember where it came from, this study, but it was something like once the general population spends 50% of its income on food, they'll riot. Like they lose their mind at that point. So that's something that you can kind of see, like when food prices really start to elevate inside of a country, you know that the civil unrest is about ready to take place. And I forget where the study, like the study goes back a long ways too. U.S. dollar is the company script of America. Yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the way of looking at it. It's really it. All right, Scott, go to Oakland to get a preview of the future. Right, that was the only money that was out there.